this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. As is traditional at the start of the Care Collab, I will push the names of the other channels taking part up the screen for you all to see before we start. So, in a galaxy far, far away. This is my effort, another Care Collab, Miltoniopsis. Not the easiest of plants to grow in my environment, that's for sure. Nonetheless, I've persevered with these probably since I actually took on this and converted this conservatory. I keep trying them on and off. I have periods where I think there's no point in getting any more of them, they're going to die. And in the main, I'm proved right, they die. I know why, and it's a matter of trying to prevent the inevitable, which I'm sort of attempting to do. So let's start by looking at where these come from. Yeah, now these come from mainly on the edges of montane forests, cloud forests. So relatively cool, constant airflow. That's the important bit, and in addition to that, very humid atmosphere. Yeah, and normally under cover. You don't normally find these out in the sun, but I think we're down to 5 species now. I think there used to be 6, but one's been extinct for long enough now that we don't count it anymore, although I'm sure it's probably around in cultivation sometime in some places, but nonetheless currently found in the wild there are 5 left. So this is not a large genus by any means. These are often sold as Miltonias, and they are far from Miltonias. They come from a totally different part of the world for a start. They're often referred to as those other Miltonias, you know, the ones that don't grow so easy. But some people grow them like weeds, and I'm still firmly convinced it's a knack. It's getting a combination of things right for your environment. And that combination is likely to be different in some shape or form in every environment. And this is what makes them difficult for a lot of people, is trying to find those subtle places, things, environmental variables that make them work for you in your environment. So there is no one way. You know, everybody can say, well, this is how I grow them, and the person next door tries it and kills them all. Yeah, it is. I think it comes down to the fact that they're just fussy. It's as simple as that. They are fussy. But as you get into some of the hybrids, like the one I've got in bloom there, they get stronger and less fussy. And depending on the hybrid you get, this is where we often find, well, mine grows like a weed. You know, I get 2 spikes on every new growth, and I've got 3 or 4 new growths at once. Well, think yourself lucky, because a lot struggle to get a single new growth and are lucky to get it to bloom. So the variables. Right, so where it comes from: cool, humid, airflow. 3 vital important factors. The amount of light you give them is another variable that is difficult to assess, because the old you know, scrolls and runes and things like that from years gone by will say that these like heavy shade. Well, the chances are, if yours never bloom but seem to be growing very well, then that's your problem. They're not really heavy shade growers. They like to be shaded. Some of them grow lower down at lower elevations, some of the species, and are virtually intermediate growers, not cool growers. They can tolerate more heat, and where they come from they get it. But they still get that airflow and the humidity. Amount of light variable. I mean, some are even found in what you'd call dappled shade, where the sun actually breaks through at certain times of the day. I wouldn't recommend it through glass, let's put it that way. Right, so main factors for growing orchids, all orchids, this is not just Miltoniopsis, but we'll drop back into those. The factors that you need to consider: temperature. Where you see temperature ranges where it says minimum this and maximum that, that minimum, and this is important, is the nighttime temperature. Yeah? Not the minimum during the day, that's your nighttime temperature. And the thing that a lot of people forget is that difference between daytime temperature and nighttime temperature has to be there. And for certain orchids it has to be above a certain amount. 1 or 2 degrees difference between day and night is not going to hack it. You do need the drop in temperature at night. It affects their metabolism, their physiology. Yeah? Subtle changes happen as it gets dark. The plant reverts round from, from what it's doing during the day, photosynthesis. It literally turns that back to front and works the other way round during the dark. A much slower rate, but it's at it. So with these, you often see a minimum temperature of 10 to 12 degrees. If you have a look at the minimum temperatures where they come from, rather than what it says in the books for this type of orchid, you'll probably find it's a bit warmer than that as a minimum temperature. But it can occasionally drop down to that level. I would say personally that a minimum nighttime temperature for these is around 13, 14, 15 degrees. But then if you've got a minimum of say 14 degrees, then during the day you need to get up to 20 at least. You need that difference. Now when they say a maximum temperature, this is a problem with these. They do not like heat. Yeah, they will tolerate it. Certainly some of the hybrids might tolerate it better than some of the species, but they do better without heat. And by that I would say if you can keep them below 26 degrees, you'll probably have more success than I do, because we're in a heat wave at the moment. So I've got 16-hour days of up near 30 degrees, and these are struggling. They're under extreme duress and stress. So temperature range, go steady on your minimum. It's not absolutely necessary to chill these right down, but get a good break between day and night. So that's temperature. Humidity, err on the side of more rather than less. I know some people that grow these quite well in their house and their humidity's around 50, 60 if you're lucky, and they're doing okay. But they'll do a bit better perhaps if you can raise it up a bit, and I'd recommend a minimum of 70. And the warmer it gets, maintaining that humidity at 70 will become more and more difficult. So try for around 70. So that's humidity. They're not going to like dry air. They're just not going to like it. Well, no orchids do really. Most prefer a buoyant atmosphere, and it's difficult to describe the right atmosphere for Miltoniopsis. If you walk into a Miltoniopsis specific growing area, it'll feel light and buoyant. It won't feel heavy and oppressive like it does. You go into some of the greenhouses at Kew Gardens, it's heavy. The humidity's up 85, 90%. Temperature's up 27, 28 degrees. It's oppressive. It's not nice. It's heavy. And that's not what these like. It should feel light, airy, buoyant, I think is a nice expression. You'll know it when you come across it. And it's something I can achieve for about 2/3 of the year. But for the other third of the year I can't, and that's when mine suffer. So that's that. We've done light. And then probably the thing that will keep them a lot healthier if it's there than if it's not is air movement. Now you don't need a force 8 gale. It's a strange concept where these cloud forests, these montane forests, it's basically warm air rising from the valleys, often from the coast, coming in. Yeah, it's laden with moisture, and then there's this mountain in the way. And the only way over the top with that prevailing wind is to drop the moisture. That's where the cloud forests come from. It's the moisture in the air as it cools, because as we all know, the higher up you go, the cooler it gets. So that's what they need. Every single element of that you don't get right for your plants is one item of stress. So if it's a bit like here, I'm going to get up to probably 28, 29 degrees in here today. That's an item of stress. We'll call that 1. Yeah? What else will stress them out? Warmth without humidity. So the wrong humidity for the temperature could be an element of stress. Stress item number 2. Insufficient roots to keep the plant growing. Stress item number 3. Yeah, not enough root system. Why hasn't your plant got enough roots? Probably because it lost the ones it once had. Why did it lose them? Media starting to go off, and it will take down Miltoniopsis roots faster than most other orchids. So whereas some orchids will tolerate your media, whatever you choose, starting to break down, starting to go off, and they'll put up with it for a while, and they'll slow down, and eventually the roots start to go. Miltoniopsis will go a lot quicker than that. That's the difference. It's an item of stress, is media breaking down. What else? Not enough moisture at the roots, if you've got any. If you see concertina leaves on these, it's because they're not hydrating. Well, there's 2 reasons it's not hydrating. You're not giving them enough, or you haven't got enough roots to provide for them. And that's more often than not the problem, is root loss on these. And once they lose their roots, they can be a bit of a pig to grow new ones, unless all the other elements of stress are taken away and you get closer to their optimum conditions, in which case they'll probably get going again reasonably quick. So for me, if I'm going to get root disturbance, the last time I want that to happen is in the summer. That's the last thing I want to happen. I've got to keep every single potential stress element for mine during the summer months at 0. No stress. I can't stop the heat. Yeah, so they're going to get that, but I can keep my humidity and my airflow up, which sort of degrades the heat a bit. It doesn't have such a dramatic effect on them. Okay, right, I'm going to pick the put my coffee down, won't I? I'll pick the camera up now, and we'll pick up some and chat, because I've got a couple of species in here. I've got a primary cross, some complex hybrids that are only just alive, and we'll sort of go from there. Right, let's switch camera off so that I can pick it up. Okay, so we can have a look at these individually and just go over. I would say apart from one, there's something wrong with every single one of them to a degree, some worse than others. So this is my only one in bloom at the moment. This is a no ID hybrid. The fragrance on it is absolutely gorgeous, and this is a bog standard hybrid. I've just picked that up. It's light as a feather. It's too dry. This is the consequences of poorer hydration. But this one is only just getting its root system going, but at least it's got some. It's got quite a few new growths coming on it, multiple new growths coming on it. So this one's actually doing okay, but it's not going to continue to do okay being that dry. Now, why it's that dry is because I've been watering the plants with the sprayer. So I've been going round with the sprayer round the tops of the pots. This is in cocoa husk. That is nowhere near enough water to actually rehydrate the cocoa husk. That now needs a good soak. But we've got growing root tips, we've got active new growths coming. Some of the previous growths have got a few concertina leaves. That was the transition from when I got it to getting it repotted in the new media, where it didn't get hydrated for a while. It's got new roots coming. It's doing okay. That would be classed as fine by me. Right, coming over here. This is a species, and this is Vexillaria. This, not that long ago, suffered with the orange rot, which is So I would say it's more prominent with Paphiopedilums, but Miltoniopsis can get it as well. And it's just basically the base of the plants, base of the leaves, just suddenly start looking orange, a browny orange colour. And it can happen within a day or two. You sort of, you know, if you're not keeping your eye on things, you know, perhaps like in the winter when you only water them once a week, once every 10 days or something, and you look and you think, oh, that wasn't like that last time I looked. And then you pick it up and half the leaves fall off. And you have a look at the base of the plant where those leaves have fallen off and they're soggy. It's a bacterial infection. And if you get it, it's often the end of the plant. It gets into the base of the plant and it just rots it off. Now this was the only new growth on this one when it got it. It had hardly any roots, but the fact that it hasn't shown any signs of yellow, I think I've saved it. It did have a couple of roots which I can't see. Oh, there's one. So one of the roots is growing. That's a tip. That is a growing tip. So as long as those root stumps that it had push on and the rot doesn't reappear, that one is saved. But it's now a single growth. But notice the difference on this one. Look at the number of leaves. This one grows a lot of leaves on its fans. You know, a lot of the Miltoniopsis have only got like 4 leaves, and one of those is the apex, the top one. One of the ways you can differentiate it's a Miltoniopsis. Single growth coming out of the bulb, like that. The other way is the basic colour of the leaves. They're not green, they're a greeny grey colour, and not a bright, shiny green. The other thing with those is if you give them too much light, they will pale. But if you don't give them enough light, they don't seem to change colour much, so it's difficult to tell whether you're giving them enough light. But if you give them too much, you'll soon know. Right, so that's that species. That's part of a project as well, that one. That was a present from somebody. I didn't choose that one. Let's have a look at the bad ones now. I bought 3 Miltoniopsis hybrids at our 60th show. How many can you see there? 2. Guess which ones died? So the 2 people, I had 3 of them. It was split into 3. I gave 2 to other people or sold them to other people and kept 1 for myself, and mine's died. And guess which one? Yeah, it's the yellow one. But that's life. Anyway, let's have a look at the other 2. This is Morgant. They've got French names because they came from the Eric Young Foundation. This one is in a state of recovery. It may well be okay. This is often the problem you get, where you get a new growth pushing out high. And this has got stiff leaves. These are like wood, yeah? Well, when this new growth pushes its roots out, how the hell are they going to get in the media? Well, one of them's managed to creep out the side, and some of that's gone down in the pot. So at least some roots are getting down in there. It's got another new growth over here that's probably going to rot. There's the first sign, that leaf. I will take that leaf off in a minute, now I've seen it, and that may save the other 2, and it may push on. And that has a single root. Roots in the pot, probably 0. Yeah, nothing. It's just not growing. But it's not going to do very well in its recovery at this time of year in my environment. Right, this is the other one that's left out of the 3. And this one is Noirmont, lovely dark blooms, which I'll do pop-ups with those, you'll be seeing those. Again, the new growths come out high, but some of those roots have got down in the pot, some of those have growing tips. So I'm confident that this one is going to recover slowly, but it is going to be slow. So that's those 2, so hybrids, species. Right, other species. This one is, it's a cross, but effectively that it's still a species. Let me explain. Right, have we got any roots going on this yet? Yes! Right, so this one's going to make it as well. That latest growth up there with the concertina leaf at the top. The concertina leaf wouldn't have happened if those roots had got going sooner. but they're there now. We do have some roots growing, so this one's going to make it. I am so pleased because this wasn't cheap. It's a recent acquisition. So what have we got here? We've got Roeselii, yeah, and it's the variety Xanthina, which is the yellow version. Then it's been crossed back with the original species. So what you've got there is a type of variety of a species crossed with the original species. Technically that is not a species, it's a hybrid, but when both of them are species, the best you could come up with is probably a primary cross. But yeah, I suppose that would be what it would be. It's growing, that's all I'm after. If I can ever get this to bloom, I'll be over the moon. Now this one grows a bit lower down than some of the other Miltoniopsis, so that one will take a bit more heat, which probably explains why it's pushing on a bit now with its 2 new growths, a bit better than some of the others, because it's a bit more heat tolerant. Then this one over here, I can't get this one out because the clear pot inside the black pot is tight and it won't come out. Now this is a weird one because this is Miltoniopsis phalaenopsis. Well, make up your mind already. This has got new growths on it. It's not doing very well, but it's got some new growths and some root activity. So again, I think this one will pick up. So that's that's 3 species I've got. Yeah, 3 out of 5, not bad going. Although, like I said, the Xanthina cross would be classed as a primary hybrid. And then the last one over here that was in bloom a short while ago, this is also a primary cross, but it's named. This is Miltoniopsis Venus, and it's actually Vexillaria, which is that one, crossed with Phalaenopsis, which is that one. So that's a primary cross, but it's named. It's bloomed. It hasn't been repotted since I got it. It will be repotted as soon as we get away from this heat. This is another one that's found a little bit lower down, so it's a bit more heat tolerant, but I don't want to push my luck. It hasn't been repotted yet. I don't know what the roots are like, but I see activity near the top of the pot. I assume it's got reasonable roots, and it is an assumption. What it hasn't got at the moment is any new growths growing, because it's just bloomed. It's having a bit of a rest. So that's my set. Right. Arrived with lousy roots, and I've had difficulty getting them going again. Arrived with lousy roots, I've had difficulty getting them going again. Arrived with some roots, has taken off. Success. This was growing okay until it got the orange rot. It's now classed as recovering, but it is going to recover, I'm confident, because the roots are growing and the rot stopped. Yeah. This one has signs of root activity and has new growths and should push on. This one looks incredibly wispy and flimsy, and I'm not sure that the 2 long new growths that you can see are going to swell up to proper size pseudobulbs, and I don't know whether the pseudobulbs I've got are actually the right size for this plant. I just don't know. So that one's a wait and see. But we've got some roots and we've got some new growths. And then my Miltoniopsis Venus, I'm waiting on new growths, and I'm waiting on a better time of year without this heat to actually do a repot, at which point I will see what the roots are up to. But again, repot is a serious stress. They don't like the root disturbance. They don't like change of media. That can do a root system in on these. You know, you've got it. It arrives in that cocoa peat stuff, and you can see that it's going off and the roots are going down fast, and you think, right, I'll take it out there and I'll put it in some nice fresh bark. That's probably going to kill the root system because it doesn't like the change and it doesn't like its roots being disturbed. So I think all you can do really with these is just think of anything that's going to stress it and avoid it as best you can, and really avoid 2 lots of stress or more at the same time. Try and minimize your stress elements with these to 1 maximum, and you'll stand a much better chance of them pulling through from whatever that stress is. So at the moment, my stress level is heat. Nothing much I can do about it till this heat wave breaks. So all I can do, keep the airflow going, keep the humidity up, keep the sun off of them, do the best I can, and don't do silly things like letting them dry out. I'll deal with that in a minute. So if you're going to repot one, you know, don't wait till the media starts to break down and your roots are dying. Choose a time to repot when you've got new roots growing. Then if you lose some of the old roots, you've got new ones coming straight away to replace them. In addition to that, I know it's difficult sometimes because the roots might come at the wrong time, but try not to repot in the middle of summer. Yeah? Try and do it early spring, or you know, in the autumn as the temperatures are dropping down and the day lengths are average. You know, where these come from, their day lengths are averaging around 12, you know, somewhere, I suppose 11 to 13, something like that. But they don't get long days and they don't get short days. Yeah. So try and keep your stress levels down to 1, no more than 1 at a time. And especially when you come to repot, don't wait until there's signs of the media breaking down. Keep the date you last repotted it and know how long your media that you've chosen lasts. Now I'm in a bit of a predicament at the moment because a lot of mine have been transferred into the cocoa husk and I don't know how long it lasts because I haven't been using it long enough. All I know is that when it starts to break down it goes relatively quickly and the signs are obvious. Well, if the signs are obvious and it happens relatively quickly, I should be able to get the plants out and get them dealt with before that takes the roots down. It's that cocoa peat going off that seems to take the roots down quite quickly. So what can you grow them in? Well, they're like any orchid really, you can grow them in almost anything. That is probably the least important choice. All they need is some air around the roots and a moisture retentive media that's not breaking down. So these will grow in sphagnum moss, they'll be happy. But don't let that moss start to go off and take your roots down. So if you use sphagnum moss, I would say they need repotting every year. And when's the best time to do it? Early spring. Give them a chance to settle into their new moss. They haven't had a media change. They've only had a media refreshment. So their roots should be reasonably happy and carry on growing. Yeah. They'll grow in small bark, small medium bark, bit charcoal in there perhaps. They'll grow in the cocoa husk, they'll grow in the cocoa peat. They'll love it, but don't let it go off. I presume they'll grow in organic. Quite honestly, I could grow one of these mounted, but I wouldn't be able to do what I do to a lot of my orchids, which is miss a day. That wouldn't do them any good at all. They don't like to go dry. Now when they're not growing much, for instance, like this one, it's not growing any new growths, it's not pushing up leaves or a spike or anything. I've actually taken a spike off of that. It did try and bloom. I actually took the spike off. It is growing a few roots, but it's not doing much. Yeah? So that doesn't need to be soggy. That doesn't need to be soaking wet. And that can go almost dry before it gets watered. This one is supporting blooms and pushing up new growths and growing roots. That should never go dry. You listening? Don't do as I do, as I say. Anyway, that's my take on Miltoniopsis. I'm always going to struggle with them, but once I start getting plants like this in a media that they're happy, it's then down to me to not let that go downhill. All of the others I've got to get in a state like this. Then they'll be happy. The 2 at the back, that's a year's worth of growing minimum before I'm happy with those. Yeah? The 3 species, I'm not quite so sure with the species and the primary crosses because I don't really know enough about them. So I don't know whether this type of growth is normal or is this wispy growth a sign of ill health. Yeah, we shall wait and see. The one bloom I'm looking forward to out of all of them is this one, having lost my yellow hybrid. But to have a yellow variety of a species would be pretty good going. Anyway, that's my lot. Good luck with them. That's all I can say. You know, if I could have an environment which had block walls or brick walls or stone walls halfway up, and then polycarbonate for the rest of it, double skinned, and a shade house over the top that was about 6 inches away from the polycarbonate on the outside, and the sun never hit the building, ever, I would grow superb Miltoniopsis. But I haven't got that, so I have to make do with what I have got. And in here I have a mixed collection, and this is not a good choice. So I'm going to struggle with it, and struggle I will, because I love the blooms. So there we go. See you next time. That's my take on Miltoniopsis. Quite honestly, a pain in the proverbial, but once you get them right, incredibly rewarding. Incredibly rewarding. Lovely big bright coloured blooms, various patterns, many colours from white right through to the deepest purple. There's reds in there and a bit of yellow now and again, although they're the least common of the yellows, mainly because the only yellow you can get is the one species with that named variety, the Xanthinia. It's the only yellow there is. So getting a bright yellow hybrid that takes a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of planning and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.